Welcome, welcome, everybody. This is the CyphaDen chat in association with the Denku podcast. I'm your host, Tayamu Denku. I got my homie Pestilence with me, and tonight's special guest. I mean, it's crazy because I've done work with her. She is Lady Juggernaut, Queen Heroine, professor, lyricist, all that. How are you doing this evening, Queen? How are you
Thank,
doing?
thank you so much. Thank y'all for having me. I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here with y'all. That's a solid introduction. I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course, of course. You know what I'm
Thank
saying?
y'all.
Um, well, before we dive into any type of history, historical things, uh, you're working on a record. You got an album.
This is
Um,
true.
I've seen studio session clips, shit sounding crazy.
Thank
Uh,
you.
talk about that album, about what inspired it, and what the direction is, and where and when we can get the full grasp
I
on that.
know, right? Keep getting the teasers, the teasers. People have been super patient. I appreciate that. And yeah, the studio clips is kind of a way for me to stay connected with everybody, bring you into the process a little bit and let y'all know it's coming, and they're just fun. Normally when I'm in the studio, it's me focused with the engineer. Shout out to the Attic Studio and the X in the Bronx. um D-Trax has been working very very hard and diligently on bringing this to a full close, and so we're very close. The inspiration as far as the album, it was a minute. I did Metamorphosis many years ago. There have been a lot of features in between that, in addition to things even like you said we've collaborated on. Many other things in between that's held it down, which I'm grateful for. And then Breeze, shout out to my brothers, Breeze Brewing of the Juggaknots, Fever the Kid, shout out to DJ Boo. And so literally what happened is, Breeze's album, Hindsight, we were really
Mm.
focused as a team, as a label, with really just giving him the support to get that out. And it did. It was an amazing album. And so around that time, it was less about creating and more about supporting. We're a team, we're a family, we're a business. And so that's kind of where it stood still for me, just creatively for a minute. And doing features and collaborations helped to keep me just, sharpening the sword. But the first official song that was put out and that was created on the album really took place a couple years ago now, which was Anger, or Is Anger. Um, Shout out to Solitaire in Chicago, who's a producer of that track. He has a space out there called Insomniac Studios in Chicago. I lived out there for a little while, and so I made an amazing connection to him. And that was the first official joint, Anger. And I heard the beat when I was not even thinking about putting together an album. It was for something else that I was dabbling in called the Process Sessions, like a docu kind of mentory thing connected to artists and different artists, not even just hip hop, just artists in general. And I heard the beat and I was like, I had asked him for some instrumentals just for in between, like segue music. And then I heard the beat for Anger and I was like, let me put that to the side because I wasn't really super inspired at the time for anything for myself. Um, and then I revisited the beat and I wrote Anger. That was the first official one. As a matter of fact, there's a track on the upcoming project called Denial, and Denial is featuring Pretty Bully and Illa G. And the verse I spit for that, I did in Chicago even before Anger. But again, I hadn't had any real formation for the album yet. So Anger was the first one that started to give form. Denial, I had just spit the verse. I wasn't really sure exactly where it was going to go. And it evolved into an amazing song with some really well respected family features. As I mentioned, Elegy and Pretty Bully. So it started to give shape, started to take shape after that. And then the direction became talking about just different emotions, different things that we deal with, that we feel as humans, as people, as artists, as creatives. different experiences that we have. And I started figuring out, well, what do I still want to talk about that I haven't spoken about in connection to expression or emotions? And it started to have this like theme and become really well rounded. So I speak to, there's a joint called Shame. I guess I don't want to get into it too much because you might have specific questions about like what's going on with it. But generally speaking, it's an album that talks about just different emotions and how we navigate through them and being real transparent about certain things. So I'm excited and I'm proud of the work.
That's what's up.
Dope.
Thank
One
you.
one of the clips that I saw, um, beat was crazy, banging. A joint that says it's featuring Poison Pen on it,
Oh
Johnny
yeah.
Slash on the rugged.
Oh
How
yeah.
did the connection with I know you kind of spoke about it on the clip, but I just want you to say it on the podcast. How did the connection with
Yeah.
Johnny Slash happen?
Absolutely. So the Johnny Slash connection happened. Shout out to Poison Pen. That was really Poison Pen orchestrating that. I
Mm,
had originally had a different beat for that. And as far as the process goes, it's not linear, especially when I speak to this often or sometimes like when you're an artist, but you have a 9 to 5 or whatever it is, you may not be able to dedicate all of your time to a project. So something that may have only taken a couple of months for someone who can just devote that level of time. For me, it took a couple years. And we're still doing the finishing touches more sonically, and so I had heard a beat that I wanted for the song is called Arrogant. I heard another beat and I was like, yo, this is insane. This is crazy. And I had the concept. It had that tone and that feel to it, that straight boom back, the kind of dark, just it spoke to the tone of the song. And I just didn't get a chance to write quick enough to finish it in time. And so what
mm,
happens in my process, sometimes I'll like a beat, I'll reach out to a producer, but out of respect, I'm like, you can't hold a beat for me. So I either I'm gonna outright buy the track unless we're agreeing to collab or barter or something like that. And it was a purchase situation. And before I purchased it, I said I want to make sure I have the bars, and the lyrics weren't fully there. I didn't have the time to really, get it the way I wanted it. And by the time I revisited the beat and I reached back, the beat was gone. And
mm,
I was pretty crushed. I'm like, yeah, that was perfect. And I was telling Penn, I already knew I wanted Penn to be on it with me. And I spoke to him. I said, look, the track that I originally had in mind is gone. But it has, and I explained the tone and the feel to him. And he was like, you know what? I have somebody for you. Reach out to Johnny Slash. Reach out to him. We have a connection, and just let him know. See what he has. See what he has. And I think from what you described, he probably can give you something that's gonna match that type of energy. And that's exactly what he did. I reached out to Johnny. I went through a bunch of the tracks. I heard it, and I was like, not only did I love it, I feel like it fitted even better than what I had originally had in mind. So, everything works out the way it's supposed to, but it was really through Penn. Penn
mm.
really orchestrated that connection, and Johnny was receptive, and we made some cool things happen. Yeah, it's an amazing song.
That's what's up. That's dope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The you had spoke on inspiration processes and how uh you at points you weren't in the inspiration to do stuff, but then this album came and the creative juices were flowing. How do you Okay, so like when you go through inspirational periods, because all artists go through it to where they can't they reach maybe a stopping point where it's not time right now and they don't feel inspired and they kind of take a step back. I've gone through it. Other artists have gone through it. People don't even think I stopped working because I have so many albums that are finished because I have a home studio
Mm-hmm.
and I do all my own engineering and shit. So people think I'm working all the time because
Mm-hmm.
I could drop tracks at any point in time. But I definitely go through it. How do you think an artist gains that back? And like, how do you think they never gain it back? Because that happens to people. Like, even though if they're artists, I feel like some people hit that road bump and then they go through the process of saying, "Oh, I'm retiring from music," and
Mhm.
it's probably because they lost their inspiration. But how, like, do they know they're never going to get it back? Why would you even announce a retirement from music? You know what I'm saying? Like it's like the art form, like art,
Yeah.
like what we do. Like, yeah. I mean, I'm just curious on your perspective of it.
For
Like,
sure, for sure. Yeah, I think a couple of thoughts kind of run through my mind or ran through my mind when you said that. So I'll just kind of bullet point some of the things or highlight some of the stuff I was thinking about. If you hear someone whining, by the way, it's my dog next to me she wants me to play with her. So pardon that, y'all, if
it's
you're hearing that.
okay.
I'm not even gonna bring her into the screen right now, maybe at some point, but she's literally throwing her bear on me. Yeah, so first of all, I think artists are always artists. If you're an artist forever. Whether you're actively creating anything um or not, real artist, it's in the way that you think, it's in the way that you see things, it's your perspective, it's how you kind of just look at the world. It's how you get dressed. It's how, it's just who you are. It's the fabric of who you are. So I don't think you necessarily have to create something in every waking moment or every week or every month or every year in order to validate who you are as an artist, if that is in fact who you are. So I will say that. I don't think that ever stops. I think that's just who you are. That's what it is. As far as what you create now and inspiration, I do think that there are ebbs and flows of things. I think there are a lot of factors that play a role, like work, like life, like family, like bills, etc. Um, but again, I can, just because I'm not creating an album doesn't mean that I'm not writing, right?
Hmm.
Um, I'm also a visual artist. I haven't painted in a while, but I teach art and I see art and stuff. And so just because I'm not putting the paintbrush to the canvas doesn't mean I'm not creating or sketching or thinking about ideas. So I think as far as inspiration goes, sometimes you do need to pause, right? Because if not, what are you painting? What are you writing about? So sometimes you need to take in information, you need to absorb information like a sponge. And then when it's fully composed with something, then you squeeze it out and then you have something to share to produce. My thought, one of my thoughts was like weather. Like it don't rain every day, but it absorbs, the clouds like absorb moisture over time. So it takes in things, even in nature. Nature takes things in and holds on to it for a minute. And then after a while, it releases it. So I don't think we're any different really. So those ebbs and flows, it may take a minute. You're taking information in. Oftentimes with writers, they talk about the power of reading. Sometimes reading, hearing different cool new words and vocabulary or the way people put things together, experiencing some life stuff, and then going back to the board to talk about it. So those moments, those segue periods, that's what I think helps to give the inspiration. And then you see the results of the creative process after. So it's a weird thing, inspiration. I think it's there. I just think you're not always in the active space of creating or sharing whatever it is that you've been absorbing.
Hmm. I
I
feel
really
that.
like that sponge analogy because yeah, that's something I definitely um I've experienced that often. And I think, like when I first got into the creative process of doing music and doing stuff, the first time I kind of hit those points where I wasn't producing and I was absorbing,
Right.
there is like a pressure and a fear behind that, because you're still you'll still sit down and try to write. And I still have that, like I got a stack of beats the other day and I had a bunch of time and I sat and I tried to write to them and I wrote a bunch of stuff and I didn't like any of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then yesterday I got home after working 12 hours and I took 30 minutes and I wrote something that I really liked, and it's like that,
Exactly.
you have that. And I think the more you do it, the more you start to trust in that, that it's going to come back. You're going to get there. And once you take that pressure off, it allows you to really appreciate all the points that you're at, not just because everybody loves to when it's flowing. When you're flowing, everybody that feels so good.
Of
But
course.
you learn to appreciate while you're experiencing something new that you know you'll be able to draw on, you learn to start to appreciate those moments too and go like, wow, this is going to influence me in a powerful way. This is really cool. So I think that a lot of artists put a lot of pressure on themselves. And I think sometimes, like Denka was saying before, sometimes and I've seen it where somebody will announce a retirement, and then it comes back around once that pressure's been off them for a while and they realize that no, they want to continue to make music. But I think that it gets confused.
Yeah, I love what you said, Pestilence, about the trusting, like trust in the process. And you're right, like sometimes you'll be there in the space of trying to create something and it can almost feel forced, but it is still practice. And then it's interesting, you said after a 12-hour day, maybe that's what you needed to release after that long work day. That was your freedom, like that was your go-to, and you did it quick. You know what I mean? Like 30 minutes. I've done that too. Sometimes I'll sit with the verse and it'll come out 30 minutes, 45 minutes, a whole song, or a hook and a verse or whatever, versus sometimes I can sit with something for days and weeks and I'm
Yeah.
not getting the 16 that I want. So it is a different part. And the other thing too I thought of was Jordan. It's like, oh yeah, I'm retiring. Hold on. Now I'm gonna play, what was it, golf or baseball? I think was it
Baseball, yeah.
baseball, right? And then he
Yeah.
came back and played ball. So it's like, the other thing too that I think is interesting is that sometimes we navigate to other creative spaces. It doesn't mean that maybe you're still not rhyming. There's so many people who I know personally who've gone from like, okay, MCing to maybe comedy or beat making or this. And a lot of artists do all those things behind the scene too, like our painters. And so sometimes it's not about not creating. Maybe you're just shifting what you create. You're just picking up a different tool to express yourself. And inspiration could look like different things. Like I'll listen to Cool and Gang and like all day. It's like I'm not just listening to hip hop, and obviously that comes from that. There's the relationship, but I'm just saying, like, inspiration is going to come from lots of different places, and there's so many parts and caveats to this. It's not one thing for sure.
Well, and the other thing too, when you were talking about, like you had a gap between not creating an album and now you got this album that you're working on, and you were talking about kind of shifting your focus to being about supporting your team.
Right.
And that's something that like me and Denko have been fortunate. I have a team of guys that I work with, that that happens and you kind of get what I've noticed with that too is when you shift your focus to kind of helping those other people, then when those projects drop, like when Denku drops a new album and I listen to that album, that inspires me.
Yes.
And then
And
it's like now I wanna, yeah. And it's like we just dropped me and one of my other friends that I'm really close with that's part of Two Face Media with me. We dropped a project yesterday and we talked to a couple of the other people on our team, and they were, one of the guys was like, man, I was kind of in a funk, but now like I've been writing all day after
that's
listening to
real.
this,
That
and
that is so real.
that's
Yeah, I
the
love
best,
that. Yeah, yeah. That's really a great point, because you're right. When you're in service and you're helping and supporting, but once that does drop, and I think that because there are different people on the team who are creatives, there is that flow. Now that you put it that way, Pest, like I think about after Breeze's project dropped, Hindsight, that's when I really did get serious about my album, right? And as I'm about to drop this, Breeze has stuff that he's dropping, like, that's following that. And so there is really like a rhythm and cadence in between us, just as a team and label, that I wasn't looking at it consciously from that space. But you're right, that definitely does happen as well. It's a good point. Thanks. Yeah.
Um, can you, I mean, is the album is in the finishing touch mode right now? Is it completely done
It's
or
literally, we're literally just there's one song that has to be mixed and mastered that we're waiting on, like literally just one. Everything else is done. So this is just the cherry on top. That's it. I said this is the
that's what's
last
up?
one right here. Yeah, where everything else is finished. No more recording, no more writing, none of that. It's just the final tweak on one last joint. But it's a really important song. And so, we're waiting for it.
That's what's up. So you being um you being a teacher,
Yeah.
teaching, when you're gonna put out this album, you come from the era. You come from the era where, obviously you toured all over with the Juggaknots. Like you were from the era. You did the Lyricist Lounge. Like there's videos of you dropping verses at the Fat Beats, like all this crazy stuff, right? So
Right.
you come from the era, and now you're in your professional life, teacher, but still have the passion to put out art, the music. What's your plan with the album? Is it just gonna be a full drop, push the hell out of the album, maybe some merch, stuff like that? Because at this phase, do you have any plans of touring? Do you think you need to tour in this era that we're in? Or like what's your plan going forward?
A really great question. It's a really great question that I think about often myself. But I've been a teacher since I was like 22, 21, 22. So I've been doing that for a very long time too. I would say as much as I've been in a professional space with my music, Lyricist Lounge, I was a little bit younger than that. But yeah, I've been juggling both of these spaces for a very long time. I think that the last couple of years specifically, maybe the last like 5 or 3 to 5, there's been a real conscious effort to bring the different things that I do together, like hip hop education. And so like speaking specifically to that. However, as far as the album goes, I am really excited to share this album. So there'll obviously be constraints with time and flexibility for moving around because yes, I do teach full time. I'll be in a class full time come September again. So I envision a lot of hustled weekends. I envision taking advantage of, supposed vacation time, as far as, just maybe a week off here, 3-day vacation here. So I'm gonna have to work around my schedule because
Hmm.
that is my main source of income. Um, but this is a really important album to share. And so I'm just gonna have to be really creative with who wants to see what where. Let's push in building relationships and community and collaboration, which we've been talking about within the team quite a bit. So it's not just me, maybe it's a couple of people who we're going out with and doing something. So I guess, kind of picture like a mini tour. This is going to be a lot of mini moments, but also grand moments wherever we are. So you're right. It has to look a little bit different with what I'm doing, especially at this stage. But I definitely do anticipate and plan on still utilizing those pockets of time to share the album. That's one. The other thing that I really am hoping that the album is going to do, and I plan on being really proactive about, there's certain topics on the album that I speak to. Like there's a song called Anxiety. There's a song, like I mentioned, Denial, where in the hook I'm saying I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. And it's like if you say it, there's a movie, I forget what movie it is, but he's like, if you say you're okay one more time, I know you're not okay. And so this is something that we use common phraseology, like, yeah, I'm good, and you're not. And so it speaks to things like that, speaks to anxiety, depression, different things that I've experienced and gone through and still have moments with. And in addition to just performing, I want this album to really be an opportunity for conversations like this, for workshops, panels, just discussions on how we can, continue to use music in a therapeutic space, continue to talk about things that need to be shared and expressed in a way that's healthy, that's creative and communal. Because a lot of people are going through things like this. We just don't maybe talk about it enough. I think we're actually increasing the amount and the platform for these conversations. So I just hope that this is another opportunity in order to do that, another vehicle. So shows is one thing, but in addition to that, conversations, panels, workshops, and that's where the education piece definitely comes together because I can speak to both veins, so it can be an educational tool as well.
Hmm. That's what's up.
What's up?
Pestilence, you got
Mhm.
something?
Well, Yeah, I do actually. I'm curious because you do come from that era that is, things were a lot more, like that's the foundational era is the way that I look at it. I was talking to one of my friends that like him and I are both from a newer era, but we feel ourselves kind of misplaced in a sense with like a lot of our peers and a lot of the people, I mean, that are coming out and doing things. It feels like people have different ambitions and different visions of what the culture is and what hip hop is. There's so many more interpolations of it than there were ever before. And one of the ones that we've come across a lot that we've kind of butted heads with consistently is the new kind of wave of, and it seems like in the last 5 years more so, they've really pushed towards kind of going through those legends and taking these people from the older eras and trying to, in my mind, exploit it with these mass feature packs where they'll take one verse from, the most recent one I saw was Rakim. They took a verse from him and they market it for $150 or something like that, and anybody can do a song with Rakim. And for me, it's never about who I'm like doing a song with in terms of what they can bring to the table fame wise. It's always like creating the song is so important and having somebody that's on the same page and moving towards the same goal, because to me, what it's about is the art form. It's about like at the end of the day, I make a lot of this stuff for myself. So I want to make something that's I want to listen to afterwards and I want to be able to go back after time and be proud of, and not just do it for because I think it's going to be a song that people are going to play a lot. It's kind of more so like you're talking about with this project, you're talking about starting a conversation and doing something kind of bigger than yourself, sharing
Correct.
knowledge. Do you
Absolutely.
think what is your opinion of that kind of new wave of, I mean, in my mind, it's watering down a lot of that, that what makes art so special and
Yeah.
creating it into more of like a commercialized, a product more than it is an art form. What do you make of all that?
So I'll thank you for sharing that. I will say that I'm not as familiar with that. I almost feel like I'm a visual learner too, so I almost feel like I need to see what this is. Or maybe I need to come out of my cocoon a little bit more. But I will say this from what I'm understanding, I think the interesting thing that kind of hit me was even though I'm guessing it will be watered down from again what I'm understanding, but if from a historical aspect, I'm gonna play kind of like the flip on this. If from a historical aspect, it puts younger artists or younger people on to who Rakim is, and then they're trying to create something. Is it like spitting a verse that he did, or is it doing it on a beat? Again, I'm
So,
trying
so
to
it,
understand.
it's
So,
it's it's like this. There's multiple beats
Yeah.
that he rocked. I believe the thing they're promoting right now is there's a 24 bar verse
Okay.
that he spits over multiple beats. People buy this pack for crazy cheap money,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Again,
not,
I'm not
and
familiar. Okay.
and multiple people can buy the same verse and decide which beat they want to use with licensing so they can promote it themselves. But again, it's a verse that probably 200 to 300 people are going to get, and it's still being
Yeah.
marketed as an exclusive collaboration with the legendary
Oh,
Rakim.
I see. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit more clarity. Yeah, again, I wasn't familiar with this. Um, Again, what I'll say is like everything else, it seems like there's two parts to this. Um, my concern is he getting the pay that he deserves? So from what you're saying, it's super cheap. So that would be an issue for me, I guess, from an economic standpoint, right? Um, what I will say though is if it does help bring visibility and educate them on who he is, then I think that could potentially be a takeaway, right? That could potentially be a takeaway. Now, maybe how they're going about it, maybe not the best way. But if it means someone who had no awareness of who Rakim was or Cool G Rap was, or DOC was, if that helps to bring about awareness almost from a historical standpoint, because this is history, like, yes, current, but these are people and icons in the game, Big Daddy Kane and this one and Rick. If it helps to bring awareness as to who it is and educate them, then I think that is positive. The negative sounds like how it's being or not being monetized. That's kind of what I'm learning or hearing. Again, it's the monetization, the value system. Like, is it being valued the way that it should be valued? And it doesn't sound like that, but from an awareness standpoint, I'm just trying to look at it from both spaces. It's important for people to know who these folks are. But if it's exploitative, then yeah, that's also an issue. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people you hear, like, I saw something on Instagram the other day, and I don't even know how you do this, but I guess it was a TikTok that ended up being on Instagram. Anyway, it was like a line invisible, like a line division, and they were playing songs, and it was a group like 4 or 5 guys, and they were like, okay, you're stand on this side of the line if you know this song, and if you don't, then you got to stand over here where you're like, nah, I'm not familiar with that. And they played Wu-Tang, and I want to say that these young men might have been like in their early 20s or mid 20s, or certainly early 20s, and they didn't know who Wu-Tang was. So to the point of this, again, there sounds like there's some real things that need to be adjusted with how it's being monetized and the value. But if it helps to bring visibility and exposure, and like, so people are aware, that can be a roundabout way to also educate people and bring more visibility to who these folks are. So I'm just saying, trying to play kind of devil's advocate for looking at both ways. And I also need to educate myself more about what it is. But not knowing who Wu-Tang is in your mid-20s, my daughter knows who Wu-Tang is, and she's not 20 yet. Matter of fact, she bought me tickets to go see Wu-Tang for my birthday last year.
That's awesome.
It's like, come on, certain people you have to know. So if it becomes a weird, trendy way of seeing who people who deserve that level of exposure and notoriety as foundations for this.
Yeah. Doesn't
I
that
see.
come? I'm sorry. Real quick, Pestilence. Let me
Yeah.
Doesn't that come from the education in the household though, like, as well? Because obviously my daughters know, real hip hop shit. Like, they've straight told people at school that, like, it's hilarious to me. I post about shit like this all the time. They have people at school come and show them these new people, and my daughter would be like, "That's not real rap. That's terrible." Like,
Yeah,
because she knows, because she's around me. Like, and I played all this golden era shit. You know what I'm saying? So, like, she
but like
knows.
you said, home. But like you said, though, right? They call home. So if we're taking that same philosophy, so you've taught them, I've taught my daughter, there's still more to learn. There's always more to learn. But who is teaching the mass media on things like this? Now, I grew up in that era, so it was part of my video music box. It was part of my education, my brothers being elders and being in the house and putting me onto things as well. So on a mass scale, when you turn on, 97 years ago, you turn on and you'd hear Wu-Tang, you hear Big, you hear Pop. But when we're talking about maybe more certain artists, maybe Cool G Rap, were we hearing Cool G Rap there, or were we seeing Cool G Rap on Video Music Box? So like, when you turn on the radio now, I don't even really listen to the radio. I'm not saying that necessarily proudly, but I just don't. And so where is that education of who Cool G Rap, who Special Ed, who Public Enemy, where is that coming from? So again, this may not be the best way, because value is everything, right? How and who do we value, and how do we show them that, right? People who are founders in this space. But again, if we don't have the mass way of sharing that information, and now mass communication has become social media, it's a weird way to say who Rakim is, and we need to make sure that he's honored in the proper way, but at least his name is being spoken. So I don't know if that's enough, but I do think it's an interesting way that the information is getting out, as opposed to how we received it years ago, or certainly me. watching Video Music Box and hearing stuff like that, mixtapes and things like that, Ron G tapes or whatever. Like, it's different. It's different now. So it almost feels like somewhat of an equivalent where we're hearing and seeing things that maybe wouldn't have been exposed.
I definitely like that like because it raises a really important concern that I totally agree with that I've seen on small scales because I'm an anomaly in a lot of ways, and one of the biggest ones is that like I don't have family, so I'm all my family is friends, music people, it's all people that I've built around. So I've found through a lot of those people I have close connections with that, like once I found hip hop not super long ago, and it's something that as soon as I found it, it was like, whoa, what is this? This is amazing. So
Mm,
I've dug through it myself to find all these different things. And now that I've gained a sufficient amount of knowledge, like some of these people that I know that also are not familiar with hip hop, like I have this one friend that like I'll I'll put her onto a new artist that like everybody that's really into hip like Black Thought, for example, like everybody knows who Black Thought is if you listen to hip hop. She don't
right.
know who any of these people are that are not mass marketed. So it's like
Correct.
I think the more personal approach and being like, hey, check this out, and then
Yes.
she'll send me like rabbit holes that she finds from listening to that kind of music. So I
Yes.
do think that there is a gap right now in the culture in that platform that used to be the radio, used to be the
Right.
video in MTV and all these things where you would have this platform that would market these people. Now if that's what this was, I would absolutely be a lot more on board with it. But unfortunately, at least where it sits right now, it's more so marketed towards people who already know who Rakim is, already know who, Sean Price is.
Got you. And they're
It's more
exploiting it.
so it's more exploiting both sides, both that legacy of these guys that laid a foundation that should be regarded as legends,
For
and
sure.
also these younger artists that don't have the same kind of like I don't take it for granted for a second that I got lucky to have people like Denku and Space Case that when I found hip hop, those people were in my, took me into their dojo. It was like finding Mr. Miyagi. I found
Right.
people that were able to show me the ropes. And I know that there's a lot of people that find hip hop, love it, don't have that mentor, don't have that same kind of
Yes.
leadership. They have to find their own way. And I think a lot of those people are being exploited into not really understanding like the benefit of when you collaborate with somebody, whether it's Rakim or whether it's somebody nobody's ever heard of,
Right.
learning how to collaborate with somebody and how to bounce ideas. That's
That's
such a
real
valuable
too.
skill that you get. And
That's
then I see a lot of those guys end up turning around after making those songs and going, to their fan bases. I just worked with this person, and then I'll
I
see the
got you.
comment sections, these
I
people
got
saying,
you.
"Oh, you
That's,
were in the studio with,
and you didn't
so and
deserve
so."
that level of notoriety because that's not what you did. Understood.
Right. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's just very strange to me. And I do think
I
that
get that.
it does, raise the awareness to like what you said, because I do think that we really do need a more wide arching, more than just word of mouth from people. But I do think it does start with us. I do think it starts with the
Right.
people that have the appreciation for that history, have the appreciation for what these people have done.
Yeah.
To share that with people. Like you talked about a 9 to 5 job. I work in a bar. So
Mm-hmm.
I have control over music in there all the time. And I happen to work in a bar. I'm in Wisconsin. I'm in the middle of a country town. It's like a lot of these people are not familiar with hip hop too
Mm-hmm.
much at all. But I've got a good young crowd that comes in and they'll put on Eminem and they'll put on some of these like, more mainstream famous artists that they like and they like hip hop. So then it's gotten to the point now where, one of these guys will hand me his phone when they're playing music and he'll go, "Hey, can you play some of that good hip hop? Can you put on some of that?" Like they don't even know what it is, and I'll just put on, some classic stuff that we
Yeah.
would hear at a show getting DJ'd, but these kids
Right.
have never heard it.
Right.
That's, I think that starts the fire, but
True.
finding that medium in today's age, which maybe it's podcasting, there's a lot of podcasts out there. Some of these podcasts, like, the Joe Rogans and these bigger podcasts have a huge
Yeah.
influence over social media. I think
Yeah.
one of those coming up that was really dedicated on, teaching the importance of the hip hop history and the art form, and because it really has. I mean, I think that as negative as a lot of the stuff that's come out when we talk about like today's music and stuff, and like Denku said, like, she's like, that's trash. It's still, this was influenced by, hip
Indeed.
hop. Its impact is way larger than I think the common person that's not into hip hop gives it credit for. It's influenced all of our culture in such a big way,
Oh, there's no
and I
question.
think that's incredible.
Absolutely. I love what you said too about you said that arching, like that gap. It made me think about, my brain will go between like visual art and the music, because then I think about spaces like when you had like Basquiat years ago coming out. It's like you knew he had something very, very special. But because of what he was creating, he wasn't yet accepted into like, major museums, right? And so galleries became a space in that sense of arching. Like, how do we bring awareness? Where do we house, where do we create a home for these artists to be seen and appreciated and valued and grow in who they are? And so gallery spaces really became that space, right? It became that space. And now you have some people who have pivoted, like Lady Pink. Lady Pink originally, okay, you go from street art, like literally in the street, graph stuff, to galleries when it becomes like, oh, this is cool. Let's get in on that. Now Pink is in, and bam, excuse me, like Brooklyn Museum, pardon me, or you'll see her in wherever. I mean, her work, France, Paris, Italy, major museums, Guggenheim. You can see her work next to a Picasso. So you look at like, how do you jump? How do you catapult from one space to another? Galleries help to create that opportunity. But what about for those who don't? Back to the audio, back to hip hop, back to that space. So you're right. I think podcasting, things like that can be somewhat of a medium, and where maybe you're not hearing it on the radio, but where are you able to tune in and listen to that space? So conversations like this are so important because it helps to push the narrative forward and bring awareness to people like myself and other artists, um, in a very similar way. In a very similar way.
You you had mentioned how there was a younger generation that didn't know who Wu-Tang was, and it automatically made me think of the thing that recently happened at Summer Jam,
Mm,
with
mm.
where Method Man basically was like, "I'm never coming back here again," because he
Mm.
feels like the generational gap is so crazy that he's not appreciated anymore. I mean, what conversation could you have with Method Man? Because obviously, the shit that I do, the shit that Pestilence does, it's not what's on a crazy popping level. All the great hip hop shit is still there, but you have to search for it. You have to look for it. It's not like it just went away. It's still there, but
Oh
it's
yeah,
not what's pushed into people's faces.
for sure. And
So,
thank you then for that.
like, I can understand him not wanting to play Summer Jam again because of the generational gap and him not being appreciated as an artist that has done crazy shit for his whole career. You know what I'm saying? Like massive things. Like he's like a
Legendary.
forefront
Hmm.
of the Wu-Tang, like all that. And then he feels it's not appreciated. Or like a similar thing. I don't know if you saw what happened with Busta Rhymes
Atlanta.
at the was it Atlanta or New Orleans? I
It
think it
was
was New Orleans. I think it
Oh,
was
it
New
might have
Orleans.
been New Orleans. Yeah, it was New Orleans. It was the
At the
first time he played there
At
too.
the New Orleans Fest. I don't know if you saw the video, but
No,
Busta
I
Rhymes,
didn't.
he got on stage and he's very passionate. I've seen Busta Rhymes before. He's very passionate. He gets on stage with Spliff and he's like, "Hold on, motherfuckers. Put the motherfucking phones down. Stand up. I don't do shows for crowds of this capacity where y'all
Like I saw a
motherfuckers are
clip
sitting
of it.
down."
I think I seen a clip of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, what do you say to those legendary artists that are upset at the era, at the era we're in. You know what I'm saying? Like what do you say about what's going on?
Well, I think I will say this. In regards to like the meth situation, the method man situation, and Busta seems like of a similar type of stance. That I think it is about taking a stance and creating through that friction, through those moments, through saying no to certain things, you say yes to other things. You potentially open up the door for other things and new opportunities and new shows. I was having this conversation last night. So on the 20th, shout out Kelsey. On the 20th, there's an event happening in the Bronx at Bronxlandia where it's a cipher. And it's just, I want to say maybe it's like 30 artists, 30 MCs that are going to be participating in this, myself included, which I'm honored to be a part of it. But to your point or points, both of you, it's about creating new spaces to emerge. And so, sure, you could say, look, this has gotten so commercialized to a point that now there's not even recognition for people who played a pivotal role in making it, in building this building, this massive thing, this massive structure. So let's go build a new home. It don't mean that you stop building. Okay, all right, we're done with this. All right. It's almost like, I almost want to say gentrification in a sense. It's like, okay, cool. All right, now what we going to go take over? What we're going to go create? The power with something like Busta and Meth doing something like that, making a stand, is that it can create an opportunity, especially because of how large they still are and will always be legendary in that sense. It would be dope that they say, yo, let's create something new. I mean, like the Roots Picnic, like it's a matter of doing multiple things like that. And like Bronxlandia. And like, and that this is his second year, Kelsey's second year of doing this, but it's about creating new spaces. It doesn't have to be a monopolized story. It does not have to be only 97, which again, this is years ago. I'm dating myself because I don't even listen to that. I don't even think 97 is there anymore. It's like, right, I guess sports. So I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't listen. But my point is that new things can emerge. So it doesn't stop at that. Maybe there's a ceiling in there and that thing is no longer yours. And then you create a new relationship with something or somewhere else. And people of that magnitude certainly can do that. But it takes now community and planning and saying, this is some nonsense. Let's build together collectively, or let me create this through who I am and the power and the pull that I have. It's not a 1, 2, 3 thing. And this is where sometimes I think things can fall through the cracks, because it does take planning. It's not easy. And not everybody wants to do community building things or run organizations. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Right? To create a festival, it's like one thing to be frustrated with something and say, okay, well, this is some nonsense. But it's another thing to say, well, how are we going to create an alternative? And you have to really be behind that as passionately as you are behind what you do as an artist. And that's almost a different wheelhouse. As an artist myself, like, yes, great to put together a production of something, but is that really my wheelhouse? It can be, but it can also be quite exhausting. So it means now you have to get people who are on board, who believe in that, and that's their passion, that's their expertise. And now they can help create shows and a festival. Meth ain't doing, I mean, I don't want to, not trying to be disrespectful, because he can do it, but does he want to sit down and say, let me put together, like build a festival? Could he? Absolutely. He's Method Man. He'll do whatever. But does he want to sit down and take the time to do it? I don't know. Now, is it a matter of saying, well, this person, that person, and I know that person could do it? Now it's a different conversation, right? I knew she was going to do it. Come here. Come in. You got to be quiet. All right. Say hi. Yep. I know. Baby, stop barking. Mommy's doing something. You got to be easy, or else I'm going to have to kick you out. All right. I swear it's my other child, man. It's like having a toddler. I don't know if you see the things on IG too. They're like, when you talk to your dog like she's, a real human child. That's me. That's me. My
Yeah,
daughter's like, Mom, she don't understand. I'm like, yes, she does. But yeah,
yeah.
nah. So yeah, I think it's about, community building, organization, and creating an alternative and what that looks like. And it's not a simple process, but it's an important process. And things like the Roots Picnic, like Bronx Landy, and there's so many. I just think we need to continue creating these spaces and continue having platforms like this show, like podcasts, where we can talk about what's being built so that people are aware and they're like, oh, word, let me go to that. I didn't even know that existed. Like, what is the Dreamville joint? Like, people do it. It's just we need to continue doing it. And it takes community. It's not a one person show.
I totally agree with that. And I think like because this is something that it's kind of an anomaly, honestly, in music, genre wise, and it's more unique to hip hop than it is the other genres. For example, like you take a band from the like Motley Crue. They go sell out and they bring, rock people will go and they'll still sell out all these festivals. And they'll have the people from their era that were listening to them when they were teenagers, all the way down to new teenagers listening to this. And I think a big part of that is and it's something I've seen hand in hand because we work with a lot of bands, and it's like for
Okay.
those bands when they do creation processes, it's like it's five guys that have to sit down or five people that have to sit down and get on the same page, and then on top of them they have their roadies that are hauling equipment. Like they're already a kind of a small army. They're 20 or 30 people
Right.
now when they got
Right.
a band going. So then it's like you take five or six bands. Now you got 125 people. It makes it's a lot less workload on those people when they're
Indeed.
dividing that labor. And I think for hip hop, the answer is it is community, but it is kind of taking us into a space that hip hop really never has been before. Because the other beauty of hip hop is that me as an artist, you as an artist, Danko as an artist, like we could create an entire project from start to finish without needing too many other people to do that. If you have the skills, like I know Denku can mix and master, do all this stuff in his own house, like you could do that. Whereas like a rock band, it's a lot harder to pull that off. But the trade-off is you don't have that built-in community when you're doing that as a solo. So I think it's getting hip hop into a more comfortable zone to have those amicable relationships between tribes, like you guys are the Juggaknots, we're the CyphaDen, these people
Yeah.
are the such and
Yeah.
such.
And
We
coming
all
together.
need to kind of come together and go, yes, we're all these flags, but we're also all hip hop. And
Indeed.
it's
Indeed. I
that
agree.
should be the overall thing that lets people set the swords aside. And it's not to say that people can't, disagree on things. I think a lot of times that friction creates fire, but knowing when it is time to
Yeah.
battle and when it's time to build, and really kind
That's
of
a good
come
way to
together
put
and
it.
do that.
When it's time to battle and it's time to build. I like that. I will say this. I do think that happens in hip hop. I don't think that happens enough. I do think that it
Right.
happens. I think when you think about the origin of hip hop, how everything started, it was about how can we come together, having a meeting, a communal meeting, and saying how can we resolve some problems that's going on, even though, as you put it very well a moment ago, Pest, like, all right, you rock this flag, you rock that flag, but we're coming together. That's the origin story of hip hop. So it's always been that. I just think, and that's where it stemmed from. That was the birth of it, of how can we come together as a community to express ourselves, to have various spaces where we're creating, where we're doing what we do, even if it's individually or as our own little like kind of teams or groups or whatever, clan, whatever. Like, but that continuation, it's such an interesting point because I think through time, what happened is that then it became very cliquish. It didn't mean that the group stopped, but maybe the idea of all of us collectively coming together as we expanded, because now you have so many more creatives and artists in different locations. And so it's interesting. But I think hip hop has always been that. I just think that it requires us to do more, come together more. There's still more. So your point is extremely valid, but it did exist. And I think it does.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, funding too, man. I think there's some really, I'm not going to dig into that, but I think there's some politics involved in that too. Funding, support, having systems in play. And that's a real part of this too. That's a real part, the monetary part, the funding aspect, and how things kind of systematically have been structured. But either way, at the end of the day, it does require more. It's just, that's the word. It's like doing more, getting together more. Even Juggaknots, we talk about that too, Pest and Denku. Like, all right, we have so many people within our team who's like family. Shout out to Nine, like Adigio, like there's so many people who we know who are family, who's fam. Shout out to Pop Buchanan today, Pop, who I met, through my brother. Like, there's so many of us that us collectively coming together in the way that you're speaking of, that's a tour right there. Penn, this one, like, so it's again organizing. And I think it's really critical to have people on your team who speak to that specifically. And if you don't, then it's researching who could those people potentially be. Because they're not going to want to pick up a mic, and we don't need them to do that. We need them to organize. So it's different strengths and making sure, and that's just balance. It's like if you have a restaurant, you can't have someone, you need someone at the front. You have the front of the house, the back of the house. Like, you have to have balance. It's not just artists. You need other people who don't want to do that, who can help push the mission forward from a managerial and an advertising space. Like, there's so many parts of what makes it work.
I agree. And I honestly, that makes a good point that it just kind of made a light bulb go off for me when you talk about that specific person, that person that isn't an MC, doesn't have from the outside somebody that doesn't understand the hip hop or the music, somebody that's not an artist. Why are you doing all that? Like it doesn't make as much sense as what, like, oh, they're an artist, makes sense why they're doing all that. But these people that, like, a great example, we had him on the podcast earlier, Grant Gatsby from Ohio. Like, those people, I think, don't get enough flowers too. And I think that it's something that I want to start kind of shedding more light on those people too, and the ones that really do put that work in when they're not getting on the stage, and they don't want to get on the stage because they love this just as much as we do. And I think those people should get more credit when they come through and do that, because it is a lot of work. It is one of those things that, we do a lot of stuff as an organization between the two teams that I work with. And we've tried different things. We've found things that we do consistent. We found things that we can't do as consistently. And it comes down to, hey, we're all working regular jobs too. We got families, we got this, we got other responsibilities, and it's like, wow, there's a lot of work that goes into that. But we've been lucky to continue to brush elbows with more and more like-minded people and build that team in a way that, we have a guy that is a merch guy. He builds all this merch. He's a visual artist. He does all that kind of stuff. He'll whip up flyers for us. He'll do all kinds of graphic design stuff. He started getting into organizing some shows. Like, that's
That's where it's
imperative
at.
to people,
Absolutely. Yep,
to
that's where
moving forward.
absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
Let me just ask if you have a specific, this is so left field, completely different of what we're
Like it
talking
already.
about. So I was there in 06 at Scribble Jam when Juggaknots rocked.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was there, okay.
That's awesome.
And that's when I first saw you on stage.
Okay.
Personally.
Okay.
Do you have, if you think back, do you have something that happened or a story from that event that you could share that might stand out in your head? That's 06. I mean, we're talking, there's some years now, you know what I'm saying?
Almost 20, man. It's
Yeah.
legal now.
Yeah. I can't really share. The funny thing is, the story that comes to mind is a story I probably shouldn't share. So I'm not really gonna share it completely transparently, but I will say this. I remember just looking for something at the Scribble Jam, had nothing to do with music per se. And I remember the person who I inquired about this thing I was looking for ended up like being part of the security team, and I didn't realize, and I got thrown out of Scribble Jam that day. And I was like, nah, man, you can't throw me out. Like I'm performing. And they were like, nah, we need proof. I'm like, I'm performing Juggernaut XYZ. And they were like, oh, okay. But that's the weird story that I kind of can tell, but I kind of can't tell. I ended up just asking the wrong person for the wrong thing and almost got kicked out. But I'm glad that that didn't happen. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. It was one of my favorite shows. We even have still like a document, like I think it was a newspaper article or one or two written up, old newspaper, Scribble Jam that I have. That's great archived history. So I love Scribble Jam. Like it was a great show. I remember that show really, really well. It was very well put together. I didn't realize you were there. But it was an amazing experience. Like Scribble Jam was it was a very dope experience. I love that show.
Well, you know what's cool about Scribble Jam is it brought in people from, and I think this is a problem that happens now, but Scribble Jam was one of those festivals that brought people from all coasts, all areas, all different states together, and
Right.
and even educated people on artists they might not have heard. Like I had,
Right.
I'm a super hip hop purist. Like people hate my opinions. I start random shit for no it's not even I don't even try to start shit. I just have different opinions about different shit because I'm a purist of the art form and lyricism and all that shit. So like I had heard of who the Juggernauts were, but I wasn't as familiar. But then when y'all rocked,
Mm.
I immediately hit the whole catalog after that. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? And
Mm.
that's what going to Scribble Jam, even though I don't know if I battled that year. I battled some years. I went from '03 all the way until the end. There's some years I battled. I did the beatbox battle too. Like I was all types of shit.
It's
But
all over. Okay.
but that's what I think is something that's a piece that's missing that we don't have enough of now. And Scribble Jam went away. They tried to bring it back. There wasn't enough funding. People weren't interested anymore. Went away too long. And then they tried
See,
to bring it back.
that's what we were just talking about.
Yeah. And
We're just talking about all of
and
that.
and the thing is it needs to happen because I constantly get hit up because I know a lot of people on the East Coast because
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of East Coast heads. I love the golden era. I love the the bar work that people have out there. Like that's my bread and butter shit. So,
Mhm.
but when they hit me up and they want to come play around the area, my initial response is, "Are you sure? Are you sure you want to come out here? Because what are
Wow.
you expecting?
Wow.
And what are you expecting to get? And do you think it's worth your time? Because I'll be honest, like
It's huge.
I've brought people, I've brought, I mean, shouts, Sadat X and Elder Sensei. We had a successful show
Mm-hmm.
when I brought them here when they were on tour together. Broke even, but
Wow.
hard. I've seen Sadat X play in Milwaukee in front of 10 people in the brand Nubian days.
Blasphemous.
And that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
there's not enough of the reach. There's something, and I don't know if it's just the
Yeah,
Midwest.
it's politics. Nah,
I,
I think it has a lot to do with politics and what is being played, what wants to be played. That's where we go into the space of just structure and systematic things. And
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm not saying that by no means am I saying we're powerless, but it's going to require, okay, cool. You had Stretch, with Stretch and Bob, it created such a platform where so many artists, including ourselves, um, became visible and known about. But again, that was an alternative radio show that became an iconic platform in that space. And so it goes back to systems, it goes back to money, it goes back to power and who has it, and how things are being shared and with who and to what level. And so it's a huge engine. And you have to have money behind it, or people behind it who are willing to pool money or resource money to say, okay, cool. We're going to create new avenues, new radio stations, new TV, whatever it is, right? Okay, Netflix, you got this, you got, what is the next station? What is the next joint on? Like, you have to have visible audio and visual platforms for people to see things and access and know where to go. And like we've all said tonight already, like, it's there, but you have to dig. And digging requires time. You know, if you're digging and eventually you find gold, it might be a small nugget, but how many hours did it take you to find and source that? And
Yeah.
when we have 9 to 5s and we have this and we have that, you have to be, another word that's been used tonight, you have to be a real enthusiast in order to have that level of passion and dedication to want to dig and build. It should not be that hard, but there are reasons as to why more conscious, more, creative, artistic artistry, music is not in the commonplace space. It's because then what happens? Then there's a
It's dangerous.
possibility of empowerment. It's dangerous. And so again, if we're going to really talk about it, it is a political thing. It is systematic, just like many other things are. And so look at how powerful hip hop is. So it's not that we can't come together and be communal, but when we do that and you're having a certain voice for things, if it gets too big, it's traditionally shut down one way or another. Even when you talk about the origin of hip hop in certain block parties, a certain thing, it gets too loud, cops come, shut it down. Shut it down. You know, even look at like social media. I mean, after me sharing this might get shut down. I don't know. But my point is, like, even when you're saying certain things through social media, the censorship, you hear it all the time. Oh, my page got shut down. After you reach a certain level of, fans and people who are followers, who are following you and listening to your message, if you're saying something that could potentially breach certain things systematically, shut down. All of a sudden, immediately your account just done, and you have to start from scratch again to build that community. So I don't think it's too crazy as to why things are the way they are. It's what do we do in the interim to resolve. And I think part of that is what we are doing. We just need to continue doing it. And if we had more infrastructure, funding, knowledge on who does what in community, I think it would help. But it's not that it's not happening. I just think it's not happening enough and on a grand enough scale. But we still push forward. We still move through,
Yeah. Have y'all ever played Milwaukee? Have the Juggernauts ever played Milwaukee?
I don't, it's sad to say I don't remember if we have. Breeze is so much better at stuff like this than me. He's a walking encyclopedia. He'd be like, word on March 17th, I'm not sure. I remember for sure obviously we did Scribble Jam, but I also remember us doing, I feel like we did somewhere else in Ohio too. But as far as Milwaukee, I don't think we've done Milwaukee. I want to say I don't recall a show there.
Yeah, it usually gets skipped. Like
That's horrible.
they hit Milwaukee, they hit Chicago, and then they just go around Wisconsin and go straight to Minneapolis.
Well, the crazy thing as you say that is when I lived in Chicago for some years, that's what we would hear. Like, yo, we should go out there, get some beer. Like it was like that was the highlight of the journey. Like, yo, we should go out there, spend a little weekend, get some beer, just chill. Like, is that
that's crazy because literally Milwaukee is a mini Chicago.
Listen,
that's what it is.
Well, shout out to oh my God, why is this man? He's going to kill me. I can't even say his name now. He's going to feel so disrespected. EMC, Tim, jeez. Okay, it's bad. Definitely, we're live, so we can't edit this.
You talking about the homie from EMC that's from around here?
Yes, why can't I?
Strickland.
Strick. Oh my gosh,
Yeah, yeah,
Strickland.
yeah.
Let me say this publicly since we're live. Strick, I'm over 40. Sometimes I forget things. You know what I'm saying? But I love you. Like he literally just hit me in the DM not too long ago. Like, Queen, what's good? So, sometimes I don't remember my child's name and I mix it up, so don't feel no way, Strick. I love you, man. But Strick is from out there, correct? He's from
Yeah,
Milwaukee.
legend in Milwaukee. Definitely.
That's why I'm saying I'm in trouble now. So I wish
But
this
we
was
but we
live
don't
to fix
but
that. But
but that's
I
the
love you,
thing.
Strick.
I think we don't we've had random combos, not like that because he mostly obviously tours with Ace. Like he
Yeah, yeah, for
does
sure.
that's mostly what he does. But um we don't ever get mentioned. Milwaukee doesn't mention us like
It's
out here.
wild.
Like when you talk about hip hop out here, it's the trap, it's the drill shit that's popular.
Mm.
It's not the
A
real
lot
hip
of rapping
like
over
like
vocals.
like not the
Like
lyricism
what
shit.
Pest was talking about. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
it's
Yeah, a
it's
lot of
it's not
rapping over
that.
vocals.
So like Strickland doesn't get the love he should get out here. Like he should
Yeah, no,
be
Strick is very talented,
he should
man.
be in the awards nominations for
When it
from
comes
the
to
from
out
the shit
there.
from the shit he's done.
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
you know what I'm saying? Like I've done crazy shit. They don't mention me out here. I get more mention on the East Coast from people that I know than I do here.
Wow.
You know what I'm
Wow.
saying?
Well,
Wow.
and internationally too.
And yeah,
Like,
like way more love elsewhere than but we hear that. We hear
But
you
it
don't blow up in your own spot.
happens, yeah.
yeah,
Like until you fully make it, they don't appreciate you where you're at. Like I don't know if New York is like that, but it's definitely like that here. Like all the people that blew up from Milwaukee, which is not crazy huge in hip
Yeah.
hop or rap, whatever, like not crazy huge, but when they did blow up, they didn't get love until they crossed the fucking mainstream plateau shit.
I
Then
mean,
they
I
got
think
their love.
yeah, I think that often happens. I think with New York, it's almost like an indirect way of it happening in that there's so it being the Mecca here, there's so much, right? There's this like super saturation. And I think also just as New Yorkers, it's a tendency to kind of just be like, oh, word, that's such and such, and keep it moving, you know what I mean? That's so New York of us too. I think that's also shifted in culture where there's just really a respect and appreciation for people who's doing it. And so there's this, and again, back to that community word, I think that there's really something, knowing that we're kind of dependent on each other to an extent
Yeah.
for to keep things going and to push the culture forward, and also a level of maturation. I feel like we're old enough, we're grown enough in what we do, and so it allows us to be humble enough to collaborate, to acknowledge, we're family. We've all been doing this now for 20 plus. And so, what maybe when we were younger, I can definitely speak for myself. There was a certain level of arrogance just in being a teenager where you don't realize you're amongst incredible human beings, incredible artists. And then years later, it's like, oh my gosh, how did we not collaborate? How did we not do something together? I mean, that's really what was kind of emerged, at least for me, with like the Kill Bill 3 joint with Star.
Mm.
Shout out to my sister Star and my sister Ty Phoenix, which again, I see them as sisters, you know what I mean? An extension of that. Um, we all have been doing this for many, many years. I've known Ty even longer in a sense than Star, just because, being out here, whatever. And eventually it was like, yo, you want to get on this track together? And I was like, absolutely. Out of respect and a level of just maturing and knowing like, yo, we're community, we're an extension of this culture. Like through each other, we can keep this going. So, it's just, again, different ways to help push the narrative forward. And I think it shifts as you get older and you really can appreciate who you are, but more importantly, who other people are and their contribution to it. And
Mm.
then it's easier to build community a little bit later. I do think the younger generation might have that on us. I think they're really good at building younger, at collaborating younger. It
Mm.
almost was kind of like just part of what hip hop was like, yo, I'm ill, I'm dope, like EPMD, Redman, that era was like, yo, you had your camp and that was kind of it. I don't think it felt a need to necessarily collaborate. But then you look at like Native Tongue, and so there was collaboration there, man. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the longer we do this is the more that we do appreciate the fact that we do this and how important it is to do this. And as we can come together and spread the word more and create more together, it just helps to empower us as a larger unit.
I feel that. I feel that. You know what? The cool thing about New York is, I've been out there a bunch of different times, and it's dope that there's so many legendary people still there that from the era. You know what I'm saying? Like this just happened last year. I played the 100 Mad Fest because I'm affiliated with Onyx's brand, like 100 Mad. So I was out there in Sony Hall,
Mm-hmm.
rocking, and it was like literally during the 50-year anniversary shit that was happening in Times Square, like where they had the shit in Times Square, like the big stage. And I remember walking down there before the show, and Fredro just goes on stage, and Stick comes up, and they just do slam random, like not even planned or plotted, like they're just there. They just do slam, and then all of a sudden, fucking Dougie Fresh rolls up on his bicycle. Like, bro, what the
You
fuck?
gotta love it. You gotta
Like,
love state
like,
legends out here, yeah, for
and,
sure.
and that's like I was on the brink at one point in time of moving out there because I wanted to be closer to that, because it's just always there. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
harder to find this shit. Like I remember ciphering back in the day, like with random people around, but I couldn't even tell you the last time I could find like a random cipher, like
Wow.
like in Milwaukee at all. I
Right.
mean, like we I go to Chicago to cipher. Like Tuesday nights is where it's popping in Chicago. Like real cipher shit. Shouts to 606. Shouts to my homie Shadow Master, like Autumn, Annihilation out
Annihilation.
there.
Yeah.
Like
Family
those,
in Chicago for
yeah,
sure.
those are the people, and they still bring that shit. You know what I'm saying? But like aside from that, I ain't finding no ciphers. I ain't
Yeah,
finding
I
no shit
think
out here.
I think sometimes when we're in a space where it's the norm, we can take it for granted sometimes. We can take it for granted and not realize just how precious that is to have that gift. But it's also, a resurgence of doing things. Like I said, this event happening on the 20th at Bronxlandia is an opportunity for people to cipher and get together. And it's kind of ill because quite a few of the artists, I'm learning them. I'm not familiar with some of them, a good portion of them, and I'm sure for them, they're new to me. You know what I mean? They're learning who I am. So it's really cool to just come together. But the ill thing is that from a generational space, like a lot of them are younger. So it's gonna be really cool to see. I think the span is easily like probably like 20 years of just on the younger end and then some on the older end of it. That's the beauty too of hip hop. It spans time. You know what I mean? The same cipher. That wasn't really quite the same when I was ciphering young. Most people
Yeah,
were around the same age because of the longevity and the growth and the expansion and the aging of hip hop. Um, or the continuation, rather. I don't like aging, the continuation of hip hop. you know, you have younger people who come in and doing it, and then you got people who've been doing it. So it's just cool to be able to do that. Like you said with your daughter to have, or your daughters rather, to have these conversations about who's who in hip hop. It keeps this narrative going beyond time, beyond generation, which is a really special thing. That's not many things can span like that, where you can have those conversations with elders, with, middle-aged folks, with younger kids. Like it's something that brings us all together, age wise, geographically, caste wise. It's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. I don't want to keep you super long, but Pest, you got one more question for Queen Herawin? You want to ask something?
Um, yeah, I mean, this kind of oddball out there. Just talking about like, because this is another conversation I had with one of my homies who's younger. And I think he's like 26, and we were talking about like greatest of all time in anything, in sports and hip hop, because hip hop it gets tossed around a lot, and it seems like it exists in every platform the same way where the people from their generation, their goat is their goat, and then the next
Yeah.
generation picks somebody else, and then that's the greatest. I started to kind of inquire with him, and I'm curious what your guys' opinion of is in music terms of this, because in sports, I feel like we've seen like in the NFL, like the greatest of all time in the 40s they always get surpassed because the people that come after them eventually have all of that inspiration to draw from. So to me, it's like, well, they should eventually be able to plateau above what maybe some of the people, and it's not a disrespect to the people that set that foundation. It's actually an adornment that they inspired this growth and evolution
Right.
in that craft. Whereas like in football, you see like people are, it was Joe Montana, now it's Tom Brady, and it's like in
Mhm.
10 years it might be Patrick Mahomes, and it might continue to go, and there's more and more. Do you guys think that that same evolution will occur musically in hip hop? Do you think that it will continue to evolve where it's like, one era's greatest of all time eventually will be superseded because the people coming after them have all that stuff to draw from instead of being the creators of these building blocks, these foundations? Or do you think it is something where it's just kind of there is a level and it's not going to have that same kind of um incremental growth throughout time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that one of the things that you said is a really important factor, which is time and the sense of like errors. I think it's less about compartmentalizing and more about categorizing, and really becoming a space of historically documenting who's who during certain eras. And that's how, again, expansive hip hop, as you know, we're talking about 50 plus now. So you can look at it from a space of like every 10 years or every five, or however you want to break it down, from like a chronologic space. I don't know if I would say certain people necessarily superseding. I hear your point, and the football analogy was perfect. I think that it becomes that person of that time frame. And as you mentioned before, there is a level of inspiration and honoring and building upon that. But I don't know if it will be superseding or if it's a matter of just them being their own icon within, or legendary, leaving their legacy within that era or that time frame. And I really, this is always such a tricky question because for me, there's so much iconic talent and so much talent and legendary talent. Um, and I think it almost can kind of, what's ill about hip hop too is it's starting to, I was talking about this, Breeze and I were talking about this the other day, that it's starting to almost feel like it's going into these like subgenres or subspaces,
Mm.
right? Because we were talking about Open Mike Eagle. Shout out to Open Mike Eagle. Um, and just his whole camp as well, previous industries. And so when we think about hip hop, like that in itself is like a whole nother space of hip hop genre, like very art, almost avant-garde, like, still ill, not taking away from any of that in the origin, but just there's a certain eclectic aspect of how he and they create, right? And so I don't think it's just the Rakim, which you can do, the Rakim and then the Nas, you can go that route, but then within those time eras, I think my brother is one of the illest MCs ever. I think Breeze is one of the illest MCs ever. Now, does he get that necessary accreditation? No, but not the way he deserves. But I think when you're talking about it from a lyrical standpoint,
Mhm.
yeah. So now it's like, are we talking about time only? Or are we talking about how it also gets splintered? Because there's a lot of people, when I think about certain eras, I mean, Cool G Rap for sure, you know, Black Thought. I mean, I could go about favorites, Lauren. I could go on and on about favorites. I think it's hard to do just one within a specific time frame. But I do think it's about people really creating a sense of legendary status of who they are and their contribution to the culture and being acknowledged for what they've done and what they've put down. It's hard. It's not like we just only have a Babe Ruth or a Jackie Robinson. It's not only that. I think there are multiple ones in the spaces that we create.
I
Okay.
personally have never believed in the GOAT, greatest of all time in hip hop personally, because I always felt like there is or will be somebody better. So for me, I never personally would call anybody that. That's just me. I think there's amazing artists. I think there's legendary people that have done legendary things. I have
Right.
my list. My list is a list that it's my own list. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't.
Exactly.
It,
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
yes,
It becomes your
yes,
own interpretation because it's
yes.
art. And so you can have certain things that are going to be common threads for a lot of people, like mass population. But even again, back to sports, you might have someone who maybe wasn't at the forefront, but is someone else's favorite. And they might look and be like, yeah, Jordan, obviously. But there's always going to be someone who's going to root for the underdog who still was incredible, but maybe didn't have that level
Mm,
of exposure or notoriety or whatever it is, but it doesn't take away from their talent and who they were, you know. So to your point, yes, like you're going to have different lists
yeah.
and it
I
becomes a
and
limited kind of way of looking at it almost.
yeah, and my list is always based on skill set. I feel like skill sets
Yeah.
are not looked at as deeply anymore. Like I I told this random story the other day. Like me and AG, we had this random conversation one day where we compared each other's skill sets to each other. Like it was friendly. It was a friendly thing. And
Right.
we like compared each other's skill sets, and then afterwards we made a song. You know what I'm saying? Like so it's like
There it is. There it is. Again, it comes back to just how are we going to build and honoring and appreciating what it is we do and how we contribute. Hip hop is so vast, man. You got when we talk about styles and stylistic things, you got storytellers. Obviously Slick Rick is one of the illest storytellers ever. You got Andre. Like there's so you know,
yeah,
it, it's like
yeah,
now again
yeah.
these
I feel that. Yeah,
subdivisions of things. So that's a real hard one to wrap around. But I think finding ways to solidify the legacies of people and who they are and what they've done and how they've contributed to the culture, it's vast. It's vast. We will be doing the culture a disservice by only thinking, one person of that era. There's just too many.
I feel that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
yeah.
Hmm.
So before we wrap,
Yes.
um, let's get back real quick. I want to hear. Can you drop? Do you have a date in your head of when this album
So
is
so
gonna
we
hit the masses?
literally we did have a date. We did have a date, and that date got pushed back because again, we're waiting for this one track. Um I want to say that people can certainly anticipate something dropping. It'll probably be more, it's going to be staggered. So it'll be a couple of singles that are released and then the formal album will drop. Um, but my guess is it's probably gotten pushed back. We have a meeting just this Thursday where we're going to talk about the dates and resetting where we are. I would say September. We're probably looking at the album dropping September, fingers crossed. But you can certainly anticipate the singles starting to be released towards, end of very beginning of August or mid-August and then throughout that time. So I would say August into September, we can look out for some real some goodies to start coming through from the album, and I'm excited, but it will be in a staggered kind of tier, this single, then that joint, and then the
Yeah.
album drop. So I would say September. We were originally talking about August, but again, things got slightly pushed back. But the pushback isn't going to make it be too extreme. Will probably be about 4 months, 4 weeks from where we had originally anticipated. So I would say September is a safe time to say. I'll have an answer on Thursday. But yeah,
Okay.
I'd say September and August to really start putting out the singles. I'm hyped. This album I'm really proud and I'm so grateful for everyone who's contributed. Open Mike Eagle is actually also on the album. There's so much amazing work on here.
That's
I'm
dope.
honored. Yeah, I'm honored and really grateful for that.
Do you
Mm.
can do you have a song that stands out to you, or do you love the album as a whole?
I really love the album as a whole. I would say though, Anxiety is a really big song for me on there. And this kind of goes back to what we were saying in the very beginning, of just wanting the album to be beyond just me and speaking to things that other people can relate to and identify with. And maybe it hasn't been the most comfortable conversation for some. It's become, it's even become, I wouldn't say more comfortable, but I just understand the importance of creating the conversation, right? Who wants to say, hey, yeah, me, I have anxiety, like, like it ain't like some, oh my gosh, I gotta do this. So, but it's bigger than that. It's about, yeah, other people are experiencing this and you don't want them to feel alone. You don't want them to feel isolated in what they're going through. And so, yeah, it should get to the point where it feels cool to have these conversations so that people can start to work through some of the things that they're going through and understand that they aren't alone in this.
Hmm.
And so it was a very transparent moment, but it was also an opportunity to be really courageous and sharing something that, I'm just at the stage and age in my life, not just in hip hop, where like, let's get better. Let's get
I feel
better.
that.
Right. And part of getting better is being accountable for the things that are going on and pushing past, as Pest said earlier, fear, right? Pushing past the fear of certain things in being this vulnerable. But yes, if it can help someone else, then I mean, what more can you ask for, right? Um, so anxiety really stands out to me because it just creates the space for conversations that I think need to be had. And hip hop has been a space for healing and for expression and venting. I just don't think we've labeled it throughout the years as that, but by default, that's what it's become. That's what it is. It's
Yeah.
always been a place to heal. It's been a place to express. It's been a place to be your identify, to identify as to who you are and feel free through your artistry, whether you're breaking, whether you're doing graph work, whether you're MCing, DJing, beat making, whatever it is. And as we're talking about the elements here, that knowledge of self, that understanding of who you are and how you play a role into contributing to your environment, to your community, to the craft, it's major. And so we have to have honest conversations. Some of the greatest writers have done that. Baldwin, when you think Whitman, like when you think about amazing writers, it's about really just putting it all out there. So anxiety pretty much pops out for me when you ask that question because it definitely is putting it out there.
Okay. Is there any plans for physical release, vinyl, CDs?
Yeah, that's all in conversation too. And the goal is to do a vinyl press. We're in discussions and communication as to who's going to do that and how we're going to go about that. But absolutely, we'll be pressing. We'll
And
absolutely be pressing. It'll be a digital release first, and then we'll
yeah.
be following up with a vinyl
Can
release.
I ask a favor? I've become a collector. So if I get a vinyl copy,
Mhm.
can you sign it up?
Oh, there's no question. I got you. Absolutely. It will be my pleasure. It'll be my honor to do that. Absolutely. I got
Word
you.
up, word up.
Oh,
And shout out the platforms real quick where people can find you and stay in touch with you and tune with you.
Yes.
Probably the most popular ones.
Oh, that's easy for me because I'm really bad on the other platforms. I need to work on that. I'm Instagram all day. So you can find me on IG at the Queen Herawin, spelled Herawin. At the Queen Herawin is the best spot. And then you can also find me or contact me through the Juggaknots. You can go to at the Juggaknots, Juggaknots. You can find way to me there. So you're gonna probably hit up Fever the Kid, but that's fine. Hitting him up is like reaching out to me as well. We're family, literally. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, but at the Queen Heroine or at the Juggernauts is a great space, and I'm working on the other ones, but that's the best spot to find me. Yeah.
Dope. Well, I definitely look forward to hearing the album when it drops.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I definitely keep in tune, and I'm serious about that vinyl, the vinyl
Oh no,
copy.
I got you. I'm serious too. I try my best to be a woman of my word. So yeah, I got you. And it's been an absolute pleasure, just chopping it up with y'all. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you so much.
Our
Thank you.
honor.
It's been
Of
great.
of course. Let me just sneak in one thing. Can I sneak in one thing? Since
Of
we
course,
have since we
yeah.
have a member of the Juggernauts family in the house, is there a plan?
Why do I know where this
Is there
question
a plan of another Juggernauts album? Is there a
that
plan?
always comes? That always comes. It always comes. And the answer is always we're working on this stuff and then we'll see where that goes,
Word up, word up.
But trust me,
I had to
it
slide.
comes
I
up
had to
at
sneak it in.
holidays. It comes up on holiday discussions. Like, can you pass the mac and cheese? By the way, are we doing, so it happens. It's all good, man. It's all good. But
Yeah.
yeah,
This has
that
been
would
a
be great.
beautiful thing. Like I said, this has been the CyphaDen Chat podcast in association with the Denku podcast, brought to you by CyphaDen Music, where we inspire even those higher. And remember to never stop chasing your dreams, because you will never know what you are fully capable of.
Gia.
That's how we leave that right there. We had Queen Heroine of the Juggaknots family in the building tonight. She's got her new album dropping September. Hopefully, might stretch it out a little bit, but it is coming soon. So stay in tune with all that. Thank you again, Queen Heroine, for being on the show. We appreciate you to the fullest.
Thank you so much, y'all. Have a great
Yes.
night.
You too. I'm your
Thank
host,
you.
Tayamu Denku. That's Pestilence. We are out of here. Peace.
Peace.